This seminar is for educational purposes only. It is not a substitute for professional medical advice or treatment. Consult with your medical provider for medical advice or treatment. Although the presenters try to keep the information in this seminar as accurate and timely as possible, the speakers and Mather Hospital assume no duty to ensure the seminar is error-free. The speakers and Mather Hospital are not responsible or liable for any claim, loss, or damage resulting from you viewing this seminar.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us for our HealthyU Webinar Series. Today's topic is how to cultivate a healthy gut microbiome. At any time during the presentation, please feel free to enter any questions you may have using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. We will answer as many questions as we can within the time allotted once the presentation concludes. Your questions will remain anonymous. Today's presenter is Barbara Broadleworth. She's a registered dietitian nutritionist for Mather Hospital's Bariatric Center of Excellence. She earned a Bachelor of Science degree from Queens College, completed a dietetic internship at Stony Brook University, received her master's degree in health science from Stony Brook University, and is an ACE certified behavior change specialist. In addition to supporting our bariatric surgery patients, Barbara also educates the community members through Mather's medical weight management program. Helping others find wellness through balanced nutrition, physical fitness, and a healthy lifestyle is central to Barbara's work. Barbara, I'll pass it off to you so you can start the presentation.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jonathan. And thank you, everyone, for attending and taking time out of your busy lives. Let me just share my screen here. Great. You guys can see that okay?
Yep, you're good to go, Barbara.
Okay, so I have nothing to disclose. Before I start talking about the gut microbiome, I just wanted to preface it by saying if this is an emerging science. So the field of the microbiome research is rapidly evolving, and emerging technologies are revealing the profound impact that our microbial communities have on human health and disease. And there are potential new diagnostic and therapeutic approaches that are, coming up all the time. So we only just started really studying the gut microbiome in the early 2000s. So the science is advancing, but it's very, very difficult to study. First of all, it's really hard to get inside our gastrointestinal tract to study them. It's very invasive to do that. It's very massive, right? So even the data that we know so far, there's still so much more that we don't know. It's dynamic, it's constantly changing, and there's a lack of standardization on testing and interpreting the results. So, and if you guys seem like you're intellectually curious because you're attending a webinar like this, so you might be listening to podcasts and seeing other, media that are talking about the gut microbiome. And there are some practitioners that are saying that they can, use some specific tests to see what the content of the gut microbiome is, and then they can make interventions. And that's still very, very, very young. So I just want to preface it by saying that, like nutrition, it's a growing science. So what is the human microbiome? It's really just a collection of microbes that inhabit the human body. And it contains a community of live and active bacteria, and they all provide very distinct physiochemical properties. So what we know so far is that our bacteria helps us to digest our food. It helps us to produce certain vitamins. It helps to regulate our immune system. It helps to promote good mental health. We're going to talk about the gut-brain connection. And it can keep us healthy by protecting us against pathogenic or disease-causing bacteria. So in terms of the characteristics of our microbiome, it's located in the small and large intestine, and this is known as the enteric nervous system. Enteric just means it's related to our intestinal tract. And it contains trillions of different species. And 90% of the body's serotonin, which is a feel-good hormone, is produced in the small intestine. And the food that we eat affects the type of bacteria that's growing in the gut. So the enteric nervous system, Again, like I mentioned, it's located in the small and large intestine. And it's this complex network of neurons, which are brain cells. And it's similar to the brain, and it's found in the digestive tract. And the digestive tract starts at the esophagus and ends at the rectum. It's composed of 2 layers of nerve cells totaling over 100 million neurons. And it communicates with the central nervous system via the vagus nerve. So you guys may have heard the term gut-brain connection. So during embryonic development, the gut and the brain actually originate from the same tissue called the neural tube. And later that separates into the central nervous system, which consists of the brain and the spinal cord, and the enteric nervous system, which is the gut's nervous system. And it's connected by the largest cranial nerve called the vagus nerve. And it's this bidirectional communication where, and I guess the best way to think about this is if you've ever been upset or you're ever preparing for a fight, like where do you feel that in your body? It usually manifests with some kind of digestive issue. Some people say that they lose their appetite. Other people may experience digestive issues like constipation or diarrhea, or they feel like, even conditions like irritable bowel syndrome can be related to our mood. And part of that is because of this bidirectional communication between the vagus nerve. And it impacts neurotransmitters and hormones like dopamine, like serotonin. These are, affect how we behave, right? They affect our mood. So, what data suggests is that people that eat very nutrient dense diets that in particular have a lot of fiber, those people, their correlation there is that they see that their moods are better and they have less anxiety and less depression. So let's talk about serotonin. Serotonin is referred to as the feel-good neurotransmitter. It helps to stabilize mood, helps to reduce anxiety, it promotes feelings of well-being and happiness. It can also help to regulate our sleep patterns and contribute to restful sleep. It helps to regulate our bowel movements, our appetite and digestion. And as I mentioned, 90% of the body's serotonin is actually produced in the small intestine. And short chain fatty acids, which we're going to talk about on a couple of slides going forward, are key to serotonin production. So what are short chain fatty acids? Think of it this way. Short chain fatty acids, they're compounds that are produced by our good gut microbes. What does that mean? There's always a byproduct when we eat something, right? But let's just think of a car, right? You put gas in the car, that provides fuel, but there's a byproduct, the exhaust, right? So whatever's in that exhaust would be the metabolites. That's kind of what short chain fatty acids are. And they have a very important role in human health, stretching from our liver to our brain. And they also stimulate specialized cells in the intestinal lining to synthesize serotonin, that feel-good hormone. And the interesting thing is that it's produced in our gut by the fermentation of dietary fibers by beneficial bacteria, particularly in the colon. So we're going to talk about fiber's role, but it's pretty exciting. When we eat fiber, we as the human organism do not have the enzyme to break it down and to use it for energy. So it passes through our digestive tract undigested. But then when it gets to the colon, the bacteria in the colon have the enzyme to digest that fiber, and then they produce these short chain fatty acids. And the primary ones that we know about today are acetate, propionate, and butyrate. So acetate provides fuel for our cells in the gut. It can also be transported through the bloodstream to be used by other organs. It can serve as a substrate for bacteria that produce other short chain fatty acids like butyrate, which is very critical for gut health. It can influence our fat metabolism. It can affect our appetite regulation by interacting with the brain through the gut-brain axis. And it also helps to regulate the immune system by balancing inflammatory responses. Propionate also provides energy for the cells that are lining the colon, supports our gut health. It's transported to the liver where it helps to regulate our blood sugar levels. It reduces fat production. It's also anti-inflammatory because it modulates immune responses. It can help to reduce inflammation. And like acetate, it can influence our appetite by stimulating the release of hormones that signal fullness to the brain. And it also has been shown to reduce cholesterol synthesis, potentially supporting cardiovascular health. And then we have butyrate. So butyrate serves as the primary energy source for the cells that are lining the colon. And that helps to maintain the integrity of the colon, the gut lining, and prevent conditions like leaky gut. So leaky gut is something that kind of gets thrown around a lot. And basically what it is our intestinal tract. It's not like our arteries. It's actually held together by what they call tight junctions. So if you can imagine lacing your fingers together, and if they're really, really, really tightly laced together, then they're going to be impermeable. Nothing's going to be able to pass through, right? So nothing should get into our bloodstream from the digestive tract until it's been completely broken down. But what can happen is over time, if there's a lot of irritation in the gut, it can promote what they call leaky gut, which is that it's a little bit more permeable. So if you could imagine those, your fingers being like tightly woven together, now just kind of loosen that up a little bit, and then you'll see that there are areas where particles can get through, and that can cause inflammation or chronic inflammation in the body. So, having this short chain fatty acid butyrate that's, being the primary energy source, and it's actually conditioning, let's say, the lining of our intestine. And then, of course, we have the gut-brain axis. So it's butyrate is believed to play a role in the gut-brain connection by influencing the neurotransmitters serotonin. And then cancer prevention. So a lot of evidence here. It may help to protect against colorectal cancer. And by the way, March was colorectal cancer awareness month. So hopefully everybody has had their colonoscopy or is going to schedule one if you're at that age. But it does this by regulating cell growth and inducing something called apoptosis, which is really just programmed cell death. So if there's a mutation in the cell, you want that cell to die, and this would promote that. All right, so how do we increase the production of short-chain fatty acids? Like I was saying earlier, dietary fiber. So dietary fiber is going to interact with our gastrointestinal microbiome and produce our short-chain fatty acids. So what is fiber? It's a complex carbohydrate. Nowadays, carbohydrates get such a bad rap that, so many people are not meeting their fiber needs because they're staying away from fiber, or because they're staying away from carbohydrates. We don't want complex carbohydrates are very, very beneficial for us. So what is a complex carbohydrate, right? If you were to take multiple glucose molecules and link them together, you get fiber. So a good way to think about it is I want you to imagine a rope that has one knot in it, right? How long would it take you to undo that knot? Not very long at all. But if you imagine a rope that has hundreds of knots in it, that's fiber. So the one with the one knot in it would be like a refined carbohydrate. You're going to digest that very quickly. It's not going to be very beneficial for the body. But now you take that complex carbohydrate, not only is it going to take longer to digest, so it's going to keep us fuller longer, but that's what makes it complex, and that's where we get the fiber. So it's found mainly in fruits and vegetables and whole grains and legumes. And these are all, by the way, great sources of essential vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants. So there are many different types of fiber, but in general, it can be divided into two types based on their physical properties. So we have soluble fiber and insoluble fiber. Soluble fiber, this is the type that dissolves in water. It forms a gel. It's easily digested by bacteria in the lower intestine. I just want you to think of like I'm trying to think of it. You guys, hopefully you're aware of like chia seeds or psyllium. If you put them in water, they form a gel, right? Well, that's what happens in our stomach. So it keeps us fuller longer. It slows down the rate that the food leaves the stomach. And it may have a role with heart disease, diabetes, and colon cancer. One of the cool things about soluble fiber is when you eat it, it actually binds with cholesterol in the intestinal tract, so we don't take up as much of it. So the way I think about this in terms of a meal is I'll think of like eggs and beans, right? The soluble fiber that's in beans is going to help to prevent the cholesterol from the egg, from us ingesting that. So that's how it can have a role with heart disease. And then diabetes, that's kind of obvious, right? It's not, if you're keeping food in the stomach longer, then it's not spiking our insulin levels or glucose levels to produce more insulin. And it's found in legumes and fruits. Now, insoluble fiber, this does not dissolve in water. It passes through the digestive tract largely intact. It adds bulk to the stool, so it can promote regular bowel movements, provides a feeling of fullness, helps with intestinal function, may help with colon cancer, and is found in grains and vegetables. So some of the other benefits of fiber, we talked about the gut microbiome produces those short chain fatty acids. It can promote bowel regularity, reduce our risk of heart disease, improve our blood sugar control, enhance our satiety, which just means it keeps us fuller longer, which can promote a healthy weight, and it can improve our mental health. So in terms of our intestinal function, those insoluble fibers absorb water that result in a larger, softer stool that's faster and easier to eliminate. So this can help with things like constipation, hemorrhoids, and diverticular disease. So over time, if a person is consuming a low fiber diet, there are these little pockets that can develop over time in our colon called diverticuli. And what can happen is if somebody's chronically constipated, let's say, then waste can be sitting there too long, and it can cause an infection, which causes something called diverticulitis. And a lot of times people will say to me, oh my God, I can't have nuts and I can't have seeds because I just don't want to have that bout of diverticulitis. And what the evidence has shown over the years is that if you are consistent with having a high fiber diet, then you're less likely to develop that because it will help with things like constipation. So I talked about lowering heart disease. Again, once inside the small intestine, the fiber attaches to those cholesterol particles, preventing them from entering the bloodstream and traveling to other parts of the body. And then a favorable effect on blood glucose. So again, remember that rope with all those knots in it, it's going to take a long time to digest, so it stays in the stomach longer. So, let's look at it this way. If you were to eat a meal, just to compare and contrast, let's say we eat a meal that is, let me think, Rice Krispies cereal for breakfast, right? Doesn't have any fiber in it. When we eat that meal, the sugar and the milk that we add to it, and also the refined carbohydrate in the Rice Krispie, is going to digest very, very quickly. And so your pancreas is sitting there just, constantly producing a steady stream of insulin. And then when it gets that spike, the pancreas, like a sponge, is going to squeeze out a lot of insulin so that we want to usher the glucose to the cells, because we want the body to stay in homeostasis, and that's a good thing. But over time, if you're consistently eating foods that are refined that way, the pancreas is kind of like a bad bank. It's going to stop producing those beta cells that produce insulin. And that's why people that are, elderly can develop type 2 diabetes, because the pancreas just doesn't work as efficiently. So if you want to give your pancreas the opportunity to work efficiently, not raising your blood glucose levels consistently over time is a way to protect that. So that complex carbohydrate, so let's say now we have a meal that is oatmeal, and maybe we have, an egg with that oatmeal. So the combination of the fiber in the oatmeal and the protein of the egg is going to keep the food in the belly a little bit longer. You're not going to have that spike. And that's important also to keep us, running at optimum levels throughout the day, so we're not feeling like we're crashing all the time. And then, like I mentioned, it enhances our satiety. So, foods that are rich in complex carbohydrate, they also tend to be lower in fat and added sugars, which can help with weight management by providing fewer calories. And as fiber absorbs water, it swells up, creating that fullness. So it keeps us fuller longer. So we're having less opportunities to eat. Now, look, as a dietitian, I don't think hunger is a bad thing. So I'm just saying that there are certain foods that we can eat if we're more balanced when we eat them, or if the meals that we're eating are more balanced, are going to keep us fuller. They're also going to deliver really important nutrients to us. So I'm not telling anybody to over restrict here. And then, as I mentioned, those short chain fatty acids. So as I said, fiber passes through the GI tract undigested, and it's then fermented by the colon to feed the microbes in the gut microbiome. So what's the best type of fiber for the production of these short chain fatty acids? I don't want anybody to memorize any of these. I just want you to think of the rainbow. So this is just an illustration that, inulin is a fiber that we get from things like artichokes, garlic, leeks, onions, wheat, rye, asparagus, and then we have our fructooligosaccharides, which are found in various fruits and vegetables. Yes, bananas are okay, onions, garlic, and asparagus. And then we have our resistant starches. So we can get resistant starch from things like grains, barley, rice, beans, green bananas, legumes, and potatoes that have been cooked and then cooled. And then pectin. So great sources of pectin include apples, apricots, carrots, oranges. And then we have our arabinoxolin, which is found in whole grains. So, a lot of people ask what the difference is between dietary fiber versus functional fiber, and should we rely on functional fiber as a way to meet our fiber needs? So dietary fiber just naturally occurs in whole foods. It's found in our fruits, our vegetables, our whole grains, our nuts and seeds. It's the best source of fiber. It's lower in calories. And again, it provides the added benefit of those other nutrients, our vitamins, our minerals, and our antioxidants. But people sometimes struggle with getting their fiber, so they rely on a functional fiber, which is an isolated fiber that's added during food processing or sold as a supplement. And it doesn't always have the same beneficial effect as dietary fiber does, because it doesn't have that synergistic effect of, all those other compounds that are in that food. Fiber developed a health halo a couple of years ago. So we found food manufacturers that were adding fiber to brownies and calling them a health food. So that's not what we're looking for. But if you want to rely on a little bit of extra chia seeds, or let's say psyllium fiber or metamucil as a way to stay regular, there's nothing wrong with that. So how many grams of fiber should we be looking to get on a daily basis? So women should be aiming for about 25 grams a day, men for about 30. In general, about 14 grams per 1,000 calories. And a high fiber source is considered 5 grams or more per serving. And Americans, we're taking in probably 11 to 15 grams of fiber a day, just because of all of the ultra processed foods that we're consuming. So what are some dietary interventions to improve our gut microbiome? Well, we want to eat an assortment of foods to promote a varied bacterial population. We want to increase our plant foods, get fiber, prebiotics, and probiotics. We also want to limit fatty and sugar foods because they tend to be low in fiber and they also can promote dysbiosis. And we want to limit or avoid alcohol and tobacco. So probiotics are similar to the bacteria that naturally exist in our gut. It aids in digestion, and it can help to change and repopulate intestinal bacteria to balance our gut flora. Prebiotics, just think fiber, just fiber that passes undigested through the upper part of the GI tract. It supports the growth of that good bacteria, and it's the food that feeds the probiotics. Jonathan, if I share this video, do you know if it'll share with sound, or should I skip the video?
You could try to play it with sound. I'll let you know if I hear anything on my end.
Okay. This is Dr. Uma Naidu, and she is a nutritionist. She's a nutrition psychiatrist. And this is a video that she recorded at a conference on the gut-brain axis.
For the consumer to be more educated about simple facts
Can you hear that?
surrounding food will help them make more informed.
Yep, I can hear it.
Good.
Nutritional psychiatry is a new field that is emerging, and it is the use of healthy whole foods and nutrients to improve your mental well-being, also working alongside medications and psychotherapy. So mental health is no longer an above-the-neck concept. While the brain is important, the brain is also connected to the rest of the body, most importantly to the gut. And the food we eat interacts with the system. So the significance is that the gut and brain are connected. As we eat food, the breakdown products of those food could be good for our body and brain or bad for our body and brain. And that, simply said, is how the gut-brain connection affects the food-mood connection. Many foods that people think of as treats, ice cream, pizza, whatever it might be in your world, they are mistreating the brain. These foods are very different, and they impact even the cells of the brain at a neuronal level. So over time, they can impact how you think and how you feel. So best that you have these foods once in a while. But the foods that we often consider treats do mistreat the brain, unfortunately. Some of the best foods for your mood and mental health are things like prebiotic fiber, which you simply get in garlic, leeks, onions, bananas, oats, and foods that you might be eating quite often. Also, other healthy fats like extra virgin olive oil and avocado. These are great healthy fats for your brain, your gut, and your body. Another group are foods that are fermented, and fermented foods are really great for lowering inflammation in the body. So these are just three foods that you can start eating to start improving your gut health, because a healthy gut will lead to a healthy brain too. But at the same time, if you're eating when you're stressed, eating while you're driving, running, working out, moving around in your life, this is not helping you. It's important to take that moment to mindfully eat and enjoy your food, even if it's in a social setting with your family or your children. Maybe it's while you're in online Zoom with a friend or family member, so you're not eating alone. These things are important too, because it allows you to savor your food, chew your food, and enjoy your food. And all of these things are really important for grounding you for better mental well-being and physical well-being. Most conditions, you can use food to improve how that person is feeling. It can work alongside medications their psychiatrist is prescribing. It can work alongside psychotherapy that they are doing. And conditions like anxiety, a mood disorder, PTSD, OCD, even issues with focus and your memory can be helped by how you eat. For the consumer to be more educated about simple facts surrounding food will help them make more informed decisions. In terms of industry, I don't know that we can actively change an industry. I think all food companies are trying to make healthy options, but that's not where they make their money. So I think that we, as the consumers and as the healthcare practitioners, have to take this conversation back into our own hands, help ourselves, educate ourselves, and advocate for ourselves while understanding we can obtain our food in different ways.
Okay. All right, so she did mention some ideas for improving our gut microbiome. So strategies to increase fiber in our diet, aiming for 2 cups of fruit per day, 2.5 cups of vegetables per day, choosing whole grains instead of refined grains, and including about a half a cup of beans daily or 3 cups of beans per week. And by the way, these come from the dietary guidelines for Americans, so it's not rocket science, just something that we all need to be reminded of. Strategies to increase probiotics in our diet. So fermented dairy products, yogurt, kefir, buttermilk that include live and active cultures, fermented vegetables, things like kimchi or sauerkraut and pickles that have been naturally fermented. So you're not looking at the sauerkraut that's in the can. You're looking at the sauerkraut that's in the refrigerated section, that's been fermented with cultures. Same thing with pickles. You want to go for the refrigerated section because they are refrigerated because they're using cultures to ferment them. And then fermented soy products, things like miso paste, miso broth, or tempeh. And then kombucha is a fermented effervescent sweetened black tea drink that's another great source of probiotics. So a lot of my patients will ask me what my thoughts on supplementing with probiotics. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation, the science is still relatively new here. So yeah, we can study things like lactobacillus, and there are some evidence to show that probiotics can help after a bout with antibiotics or traveler's diarrhea, that kind of thing. But I want you to remember something about supplements. They're not regulated by the FDA. And so what that means is that that company can say they can put any powder in that pill and tell you that it's got trillions of bacteria or probiotics in there. You don't know that to be true, right? So what I always tell my patients who like to supplement is make sure you look for a third-party verifier. So a third-party verifier audits those companies independently. So they're not related to those companies at all, but they'll go in and they'll take their products and they'll evaluate them and say, oh, okay, your product says that you have trillions of bacteria and this species is in there. This how many colony forming units, I think, is what they use to measure it, the measurement tool. Go to, look at Consumer Labs, or United States Pharmacopoeia or NSF. All of those are three reputable third-party verifiers, and they'll put their stamp of approval right on their label. So if you're going to supplement, look for one that has that label on it. So putting it into practice. Oatmeal with berries and seeds. So if you were to take a bowl of oatmeal topped with mixed berries, that's your fiber. You add some pumpkin seeds to that, which can be a great probiotic-rich breakfast, especially if you combine that with some Greek yogurt or kefir. Or you could do a vegetable stir fry with sauerkraut. Take a hearty vegetable stir fry with garlic and onions and your choice of fibrous vegetables like broccoli and bell peppers, and serve that with a generous helping of sauerkraut, which is your probiotic. Or you could just simply, add sauerkraut and pickles to sandwiches and salads. So remember, when I look at these, things like bell peppers, what jumps out at me is not only are they a great source of fiber, but they're also an excellent source of vitamin C. So remember, when you're eating foods that are naturally contain fiber, they're going to naturally contain all of these other benefits that are going to help support our body in so many different ways. Any questions? I felt like I went a little fast there. I hope I didn't go too fast.
No, I think we went at a good pace, Barbara. And yes, if anybody has any questions, you can enter them at the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. All questions are anonymous to protect your privacy. And I see we have... After attending this webinar, will any more supportive material be provided? Barbara, I could share the PowerPoint with everybody here. I don't know if there's anything else, Barbara, that you may have that you want to share with everybody, but...
No, I think that's fine. And you'll share it as a PDF?
Yes, yeah, I'll share it as a PDF.
Okay, sure. That's totally fine.
Can you go over the third-party companies again for the supplements?
Sure. Consumer Labs. So they would have a CL on the label. United States Pharmacopoeia. So you'll see USP and NHF.
Those are the only two. Oh, here we go. Next question. Can you cook fiber out?
No.
Okay.
No, that is a great question. And you know, people used to think that if you were to put fruit in a smoothie, that it wouldn't have the same benefits. But we still don't have the enzyme to digest it. So even if it's a smaller particle, it's still going to pass through the digestive tract undigested, and it's still going to feed the gut microbiome.
Next question, can I get a recording of this meeting sent to my email because I missed the first part? So after the webinar, I'll have to go in and edit it. And then once I finish that, it'll be up on our YouTube channel. It should be up there by the end of the week. How many psychologists are using what we have learned about diet in their practice?
That part I don't know. I mean, just like Dr. Uma Naidu said, it's a very new science. It's emerging. She wrote a book. What is the book that she wrote? Oh my, I think it's, you know what, Jonathan? Can I email you the name of her book and maybe you can include it with the PDF?
Yep, absolutely.
But they'll see her name on there, so you can always Google her as well.
Excuse my pronunciation. I'm probably going to say this wrong. Psyllium versus dextrose fiber supplements.
Oh, okay. So psyllium fiber. Psyllium fiber is the one that's going to form more of a gel. I'm not familiar with the dextrose one. What is the brand name on that? That would help me.
We'll go to the next question. Is benefiber good?
Yes, you can definitely use benefiber, especially if what you are looking to do is help with constipation, elimination, and bowel regularity.
Is flaxseed recommended for fiber?
Yes, flaxseed, chia seeds, yes.
Um, Next question is kind of similar. Is it better to consume flaxseed and chia seeds ground or whole?
That depends on your preference. A lot of people like the texture of chia seeds because you can make you can add them to yogurt and make like a little pudding out of it. People add them to their overnight oats. They like the texture. It almost becomes like tapioca when you put it in liquid. And flax seeds, you know, may be better tolerated by people. They may enjoy them better if they're ground.
Are there local practitioners in this area who practice using nutritional mental health?
Not that I am aware of, but that's a great question.
See a
And if
few
you are working with a mental health professional, I would advocate for yourself and ask them, you know, what their thoughts on it. Maybe they can point you in the right direction.
I see a few questions here about the YouTube channel. I'll share that with the email that'll include the book and Barbara's PowerPoint. And I also see, can you repeat the third-party verifications? Barbara, do you want to just send me that over email and I'll share that with
Yep.
everyone?
Yeah. Yes, that's a great idea.
Uh, Best breakfast for type 2 diabetes.
So, um, when some, well, that's such a broad question. So let's assume that the person who has type 2 diabetes is being managed, right? They're taking their medication and that their blood glucose levels are relatively under control. So they usually recommend, think of a balanced plate. And when I say a balanced plate, I want you to think of three components: high fiber, right? And an appropriate portion of that high fiber. So I'll give you a very specific example. Let's take a half a cup of cooked oatmeal. You can add a tablespoon of peanut butter to that. That's going to give it the healthy fat. And then you can have an egg alongside of it. So that'll give you the protein that you need. And you're also going to get a little bit more fat from the egg. So that balance is having, you're going to have the protein from the egg, you're going to have the complex carbohydrate from the oatmeal, and then you're going to have a little bit of fat from the peanut butter.
Any suggestions for probiotics on a low-fiber diet?
Well, I would always say food first. So I would go back to the probiotic foods, so your fermented foods, so yogurt, that's very accessible. Kefir is like a yogurt-like drink. I find that kefir usually has more active cultures than yogurt does. And then you can, use things like sauerkraut, kimchi, miso. Tempeh is a fermented soybean product. So all of those would be great sources of probiotic foods to include.
So the next one refers back to an earlier question that was psyllium versus dextrose fiber supplements. And looks like they said dextrin fiber like in CVS Easy Fiber. I don't know if that clarifies what.
I guess here's how I would answer that. I'm going to think of it in practical terms, right? So let me think of it in terms of like my bariatric population. So if somebody has had gastric bypass surgery, we don't recommend psyllium fiber to them because the psyllium is going to create that gel and that might get stuck, right? So that would be the psyllium. Now let's take a fiber where you just want to promote bulk, like a benefiber. So if that CVS brand is like benefiber, that's the one that's going to add more bulk to your stool. So they have different properties and they do different things in the body. So it's not that one is better than the other, but it's what do you want to get out of it? So let me give you another practical example that I use in my own life. We have busy days here. So sometimes if I have a morning that I know I'm going to have back-to-back patients, then I know I need to get a little bit more staying power out of that meal. So I might top that meal off with a glass of, going to sound gross, but I'll put the chia seeds in a glass of water and I'll drink that because I know that gel is that combination is going to form a gel and it's going to keep whatever food in my belly a little bit longer. I hope that helps to elucidate that.
Can you use frozen fruit and vegetables or just fresh?
Oh God, yes, please. And I'm glad that you asked that question. And I usually do include that in my presentations when I'm talking about, well, I always talk about nutrition, but yes, if you want to do, frozen is often sometimes fresher because they do it right on site. But you can do canned vegetables, you can do fresh vegetables, whatever's accessible to you, that's what you should do.
Can we eliminate the need for type 2 diabetes meds with diet?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think you can definitely, so if someone is diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, there are a couple of different strategies that practitioners or clinicians might look at. So the first one is they might look at they're going to look at their overall dietary intake, right? And then they may make some suggestions based on that. And the next thing they may look at, and we hate that this is what we go to, but they are going to look at a person's weight status because we know that if somebody loses 7 to 10% of their body weight, that can promote healthy blood sugar levels. But it depends on how far along that person is in that condition. So if somebody's newly diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, then yes, you can reverse the symptoms of diabetes and get somebody off of diabetic medications. However, if somebody's farther along in their disease process, remember what I was saying earlier about the pancreas not producing enough beta cells? That can happen. And so if that's the case, that person might need medications to help to control their blood sugar levels. So it's very, very complex. But at the end of the day, you will never, ever, ever go wrong eating a nutrient-dense diet.
Next question. Do I need to take a probiotic daily to get enough?
What do you think? No. You don't need to take a probiotic daily to get enough because what you do need to do is make sure that you're eating plenty of fiber because that fiber is going to help to feed that healthy gut microbiome. It's going to feed all that good bacteria.
And the last question we have here are FiberCon and Benefiber the same?
I'd have to look at the label to answer that.
So that was the last question. Thank you all so much for attending. Thank you again, Barbara, for this amazing presentation. If you have any additional questions, you can email them off to matherhospital@northwell.edu. At the end of this webinar, you're going to find a survey. If you could fill that out for us, that'd be great, so we can learn about what you guys want to, I guess, learn more about from Mather Hospital and the services we provide. So thank you all again so much. Thank you so much again, Barbara, for the great presentation. And I hope you guys have a great day.
Thanks, Jonathan. I will send you the third-party verifiers and the information for Dr. Umanaidu.
Sounds perfect. Thank you
All right.
again.
Thanks, guys. Take care.